I'm not in love with this Alabama team. I don't think many people are because of the uncertainty at quarterback and a lot that Shaun just talked about last segment. However, Nick Saban has made a living on when he's doubted, they rise to the occasion. And, I was just going back and looking at the recruiting rankings. I mean, they've had the last 4 years top 2 recruiting classes each and every year. So the talent is there. When you broke this Alabama team down, what stood out to you and what is your projection of Alabama in 2023?
Yeah, well, thanks, Tim and Shaun, for having me on. It's the best time of year here. Just hit publish on the 2023 edition. It's preview week, so excited to break it down with you guys. Yeah, with Alabama, it's the same old storyline like you mentioned with the recruiting. They're always bringing in the top prospects. I mean, it's 5-star after 5-star at every position group. But what stood out this time around is more question marks than usual heading into a season at Alabama. I mean, the quarterback spot is up for grabs, changeover at running back, a couple big offensive linemen are gone. They lose 3 all-SEC first-teamers off that defense. But, if there's any program that's built for change or built to reload, it's Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban has switched his coordinators out time and time again, and they stay elite every single year. So I have them just outside my playoff bracket. I have them still winning the West despite a close run by LSU here. But I have them first in the West, 5th overall.
Well, you do have your title bracket out there. I'm not giving away to folks. You've tweeted out that cover sheet, and in that Final Four, I should say. Remember, last year of the Final Four, before we go to 12 next year, is Florida State, and they've got a lot of buzz. Open the season with the highest profile game of week number 1. That Sunday night affair down in Orlando. They're a slight dog there. They go to Clemson in late September. But you have Florida State in your playoff as the number 3 seed. Currently, they're plus 280, Brett, to make the college football playoff at DraftKings. So why ultimately did you think that Florida State this year is capable of making a run to the playoff?
Yeah, absolutely. With Florida State, really it started last season. It was really a statistical breakthrough last year. They were one of my stat giants where they were top 20 in almost every metric. I break it down there in the preseason preview magazine. Just incredible at every spot last year. A couple close losses. But here's the thing that really stood out. There's 2. It's the returning production levels. I mean, the amount of experience and starters that are coming back is unprecedented on both sides of the ball. Top 10 on both, number 2 on defense. So it's all back. They got key decisions by Jared Verse and Lovett there at defensive tackle. But here's the real thing is that Mike Norvell has really made a living on the transfer portal. Back-to-back top 10 classes from the transfer portal. But really what he does, he converts that into on-field production. You see sometimes headliners in the transfer portal don't make it, but he's produced 7 of them to be all-conference players, and a lot of them are back this year. He plugged one of the holes, which was at tight end and receiver, by bringing in Keon Coleman from Michigan State. A guy I already had him penciled in first team all Big Ten and a late transfer there just to boost the receiving room. So I think they addressed some concerns. It's a stat giant from last year. Everyone's back. And besides Clemson, it's a very, very doable conference. So if you're looking at a win total there, 9.5, even with the toss-up with LSU and the toss-up at Clemson, I think you're in business there with Florida State.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if they're just competitive and it's a great game, September 3rd versus LSU, I don't think the loser of that game is eliminated. And I think you're catching Clemson at the right time. They've graduated a ton off that defensive front the last 2 years. And then you catch a year where it looks like Miami and Florida aren't going to be as good as normal. So I'm with you. Florida State, I can see the pathway. Now, whether or not the program is ready for this level of expectation, that would probably be my only ... as to what we actually will find out this year. Are they ready to be really big time? They've really excelled in the underdog chip on the shoulder role.
Yeah, they have. And, for me in the ACC, it came down to them or Clemson. Of course, Clemson's won 7 out of the last 8. They've been the dynasty tier program from the ACC. But I see some cracks in their program, and it's really around the transfer portal, how Dabo and Clemson have really ignored the portal. It's natural that in some recruiting classes you have some misses or some position groups become thin due to injuries or transfers out. While Florida State has bolstered their roster with 5-stars and All-Americans coming in, Clemson's really ignored that. So I think you see a lack of firepower at receiver and some question marks all across the roster. I do love the coordinator hire. I thought it was the best coordinator hire of the whole offseason, bringing in Garrett Riley. But I still have Florida State head-to-head there.
We're talking to Brett Ciancia. Pick Six Previews available now at Pick Six Previews, the most accurate preview magazine the last 10, 5, and 3 years. And he joins us right now here for a couple of segments. So we're talking ACC. Let's just stick in that conference. Who, in your opinion, is a team that maybe isn't getting the love that they should be, whether it be in the win total or just a team that's going to make a big rise this year, in your opinion?
Well, it's funny because it's really a two-team league, in my opinion, this year.
Yeah.
Florida State and Clemson, then a major drop-off. They're the only two teams I have ranked in my top 25, I believe. UNC's close. So, I mean, I guess I'll throw UNC into there just because of their offense. I think with Drake May returning as a Heisman favorite this year, or at least a top 5 guy, even though they lose Phil Longo, I think they're going to get their points. I think 9 starters back off that offense. It's really, can the defense improve a little bit? Another team I think it's considered falling on the radar is Miami, just because of how poor that debut season was last year for Mario Cristobal. But they bring a lot back. Another good transfer portal run, top 10 high school class. And if there's anybody that's got a track record of building an offensive line, it's Mario Cristobal. He did it at Oregon. And so I think they take a step forward this year. And with such a razor-thin margin in this conference between, say, the 5th place team and the 12th place team, I could see Miami edging out on that side and being, stacking some W's against a very easy league. That bottom half of the ACC is not very impressive to me.
All right, well, break a tie for us because we had a discussion in the first hour, Brett, because I'm a big believer in regression, both positively and negatively. And unfortunately, I like what the arrow for this program in Duke, but the schedule gets vastly harder. They were plus 16 in the turnover margin, so I played under 6.5 wins. My partner in crime here raced in to take the over. So break the tie for us. What do you see for the Blue Devils in 2023?
Yeah, I see under. And, let me preface by saying I thought that what Mike Elko did last year was one of the best coaching jobs in the country for first-year guy. Of course, Sonny Dykes at TCU got the headlines, but Mike Elko, incredible work last year. With that said, I know they bring a lot back on offense, but a lot of close games last year, and that schedule really tilts this year. I mean, in 2022, they were the only team in the conference, I believe, that played the 5 non-bowl teams. So they got 5 of the easiest opponents right there in the conference. That swings all the way back, and they draw some of the best in the conference. They draw Florida State and Clemson, and they only get 2 of the bottom 6 in the conference. So, I see them under 6.5. Now, I think the non-conference slate looks pretty doable with Lafayette, Northwestern without Fitzgerald, and UConn. So there's 3 W's right there, but from there it's tough. Notre Dame's probably a loss, and the conference schedule really backfires this year. So while it may be a more talented Duke team compared to last year, the win-loss record will not show that.
Yeah, here's what it'll come down to. I think Riley Leonard's dark horse ACC Player of the Year. I think he's good enough to overcome the uptick in difficulty of schedule, but we'll find out.
Man, that was not Brett. That was not the tune that he gave me. And then I bring on someone I guess he respects, and it completely flips.
Well, I disagree with under 6.5 wins. I think Riley Leonard's that good, and he's a dual threat guy. So he kind of
got to throw to talented people, though, right?
Yeah, but we'll find out. I think there are a lot of question marks in a lot of programs in the ACC.
Brett Ciancia,
the one thing that isn't a question mark is how good Riley Leonard is.
Yeah, well, he's got to throw to people, too. Jay Cutler was really good at Vanderbilt. They didn't win more than 6 games. But let's start with Penn State because James Franklin is recruited at an elite level, and you would know this living in that state, Brett, is that there is a really strong infatuation with Drew Allar as the new QB. So what are your expectations of the Nittany Lions, and could they be a team that could sneak their way into the college football playoff this year?
Yeah, I'm really impressed with what Penn State has coming back this year. It's funny, the way I broke it down this year, I started the Big Ten researching with Penn State, actually, and I went position group by position group like always, looked at my numbers from last year, watched some spring game, watched some tape from last year, and in my head I'm thinking, this is a playoff team. I mean, they have all the makings of a playoff team. Their longtime weakness was offensive line. That looks like a strength now. They have a 5-star arm in the backfield, 2 5-star running backs. It all looked great. But then the next day I go and flip through Michigan, and Michigan just ups them at every level, every position group. So but what you still have with Penn State, I still have them top 10. I have them checking in at number 7. They were number 6 in my game grader last year, so they're coming off a strong season, Rose Bowl champs, and really solid on both sides of the ball. But the game changers that elevate them this year would be the offensive line shifting to a strength, that power run game like I talked about, and the defense. I know they lose some star power, but still one of the best secondaries in the country, making my national unit rankings there. So I think you have a solid 10-win team. I think they're going to get that 9.5 with a puncher's chance at knocking out one of those Michigan and Ohio State teams. And I wrote this in the book too. It could be a rare, that's a deep cut, but a 2008 Big 12 South scenario where you have 3 one-loss teams. That year was Mike Leach's Texas Tech, Sam Bradford, Oklahoma, and Colt McCoy's Texas, where it was kind of a triangle of losses. You might have that this year with the Big 3, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State.
What are realistic expectations for Drew Allar, in your opinion? I hope I'm saying his last name right.
So realistic and Penn State don't really go together. I mean, the fans they're really passionate out here, and I say that positively. It's one of the best bases out there. But they've been calling for Drew Allar since last year's spring game. I mean, they were getting a little bit tired of the Sean Clifford experience. It was always above average, never elite. They saw a glimpse of him in the opener against Purdue, and saw that big, strong five-star arm. They were calling for him all season, and even I think they were booing Sean Clifford during the whiteout, even though they blew out Minnesota. So tough crowd. They've been wanting Drew Allar for a long time, so I don't know what's realistic for them. I think a solid season objectively would be to push for all conference honors, be right in the mix there with J.J. McCarthy and Tagovailoa and even Tanner Mordecai from Wisconsin. But he flashed at times last year. He played well against the MAC schools. We saw his strong arm. So I think he's got a bright future and a lot of tools around him. The receiver core was bolstered. Running backs are elite, offensive line strong. So he's got a lot to work with there.
It's interesting because we hear so much about Michigan and what they have coming back, and Penn State's finally on the same level. It's the first time in a long time Ohio State seems to be quasi flying under the radar. What's your opinion on Cal McCord and the Buckeyes?
Yeah, so Ohio State I still have making my playoff bracket, sliding in at number 4. I think they're one of the most talented teams in the country yet again. They have the recruiting pedigree. And while there is an uncertainty at quarterback, they have 2 top 50 guys battling it out. I think McCord will win it, but we'll see in fall camp. I talked to Brian Hartline, the receivers coach, now promoted to offensive coordinator, and he's pitching multiple guys for All-American honors at receiver, and who can blame him? It's just an all-time stable of 5-star receivers that he's stocked there. So a lot of firepower on the outside. They're healthy at running back again. That hurt them midseason and late season last year. So the big question for them will be offensive line, replacing a couple all-conference guys, and whether the Jim Knowles experience on defense can take that next step. I think it will. You have the bulk of that roster coming back on defense. Already made some stat gains last year. I think they take the next step, get a nice second-year bonus under Knowles.
Brett Ciancia joining us. Pick 6 previews available. You can follow him on Twitter at Pick 6 Previews. Let's jump to the Pac-12. They're going to be coming to Las Vegas this week for their media days on Friday. And, this is as loaded as I can remember this conference being, Brett, with all the quarterbacks that are, a part of this conference, big names, obviously none bigger than the Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams coming back for his true junior season. But I want to jump to the team in Seattle. In Washington, they get a pretty high-profile game. They're still a 2-touchdown favorite to start the season against Boise State. They go on the road to Michigan State, which looks a bit down this year. They do play USC on the road. They get Oregon off a bye, which is a nice scheduling situation. So they don't really avoid any of the big boys. They also play Utah. Win total sitting at 9.5 plus money to the over. How are you looking at the Huskies this year? Because I think you're a bit more bullish than most on Washington.
Yeah, I'm glad you referenced that win total. It's one of my best bets for the season is Washington over 9.5 wins. You touched on that non-conference slate. I'm really down on Michigan State this year, especially after the loss to quarterback and Keon Coleman to the transfer portal. So I see a 3-0 non-conference. They're going to start 5-0, get the bye week, and we'll see about Oregon. And now the key is out of the big 4 out there, USC, Oregon, Utah, Washington, they draw 2 of them at home. And I see a big drop-off after that big 4 within the conference. So I think they get to 10 wins, whether that's 3-0 non-conference, 7-2 regular season. I think they get there. So they're also one of my picks to make it to Vegas for the title game. And when you break them down, of course, the headliners, Michael Penix on offense, number 1 passing offense in America last year. Both receivers are back, and one of the best offensive lines returns multiple starters. But what limited them last year was their pass defense, their secondary, took an awful run of injuries. Now, this is where you got to dig deeper because They lost 7 defensive backs to injury last year, and that's where they were really limited, was the pass defense. Now you get all of that back healthy. They only lose 1 guy back there. Their front 6 is really stout and can go 2 deep at every position. All conference guys, all American guys galore. So I think it's one of the best coaching staffs in the country, and a top 10 team coming in and a favorite to make the Pac-12 title game.
Well, here's what makes them really attractive. They dodged Colorado and Deion Sanders on the regular season slate. I recruited Michael Penix. I thought I had him coming to South Florida. Big fan of his. I'm with you. I think Washington's set. What are your opinion on your opinion on Penix as a dark horse Heisman winner, if you do think Washington is Pac-12 title game good?
Yeah, well, I think that last year he made a strong push towards the end of the season, and I think it was actually Washington Husky fans who were leading an online movement, a Twitter push to get attention onto him, and it definitely worked. I think he finished 7th, and it's definitely one of the top contenders coming back. A lot of firepower around him, and the key is I think that they're going to be on a double-digit win team, and that brings a lot of national spotlight with it. The key for him, really, and it sounds it's out of his control, is just trying to stay healthy. I mean, last year was the first time we saw him stay healthy the whole season, and look at the results. It was incredible. So part of that's the offensive line with one of the best sack rates, pass protection metrics in the country. So, and they're going to be very veteran again there. They lose a couple starters, but the guys coming back are 5th-year and even 6th-year guys. So they've been in the program for a long time. So I think he's definitely a candidate. Now, the problem is it's such a crowded conference of quarterbacks. I mean, you have the defending Heisman, Caleb Williams. You got Bo Nix back, 5 stars at UCLA, Jaden DeLaura at Arizona, Cam Rising. So it's just a very stacked quarterback conference, but I like his chances to get to the title game.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.